And the history of this deeply troubled land is exemplified here, in a place called Salina. It's outside of a little town near the Polish border. In June of 1941, as the Nazis advanced on this town, something the Russians don't like to talk about, but it's true, the NKVD, Stalin's secret police, took political prisoners from a nearby prison and rounded them up, and in the course of a couple of days killed 3,600 people, most of them Ukrainian nationalists and political prisoners. They dumped their bodies in a nearby salt mine and left them to be found later by the Gestapo. And of course, this being Ukraine, the story gets even worse. After the NKVD had done that and dumped their bodies in a nearby salt mine, which maybe you can see over my shoulder there. Yeah, there you go. Where the trees stand, that's where there was a salt mine, a pit for a salt mine. Well, the NKVD dropped them there. And it was so horrific, actually, that when they ran out of bullets, they started putting a nail at the base of the skull of some of these Ukrainian nationalists, these political prisoners, and with a hammer, killed them, buried them there. And I say it gets even worse because then, when the Gestapo arrived and they found this salt mine and all the bodies, well, what did they do? Them being Nazis, of course, took the local Jewish population. This is a very ethnically mixed area on the Polish border. Jews, Ukrainians, Poles, all. They took the Jewish population, they made them dig up the bodies, lay them out in front of the people of the nearby towns so that they could identify their dead. But moreover, they wanted to make sure that it was the Jews that did this, because then the Nazis used the narrative that it was the Jews who had actually instructed the NKVD to kill these people, their fellow villagers, their fellow family members, things like that, to stoke up anti-Semitism, which of course was already in the area, but had a distinct political message when it was done by the Gestapo, because it so incensed many Ukrainians that they were more than willing to join up. Again, a bloody history where nobody comes off looking good. And so over my shoulder here is the mine where Stalin's NKVD dumped some 3,500 political prisoners, many of them Ukrainian nationals from a nearby prison. And this is where the bodies were exhumed when the Gestapo found this pit. Some were so mutilated they could never be identified. Some were so mutilated their remains are still in that pit. Why am I telling you all this? Why am I bringing up this horrific story from 1941? Well, eventually, once they did exhume the bodies and lay them here, they placed this memorial. And I'm telling you this story also because it exemplifies the fact that the Ukrainians knew very well what would happen here during this war. They're familiar with this kind of behavior. In 1941, we have Salin. In 2022, we have Bucha and Irpin and Kharkiv. And eventually, when it's liberated, I'm sure there will be horror stories coming out of Mariupol. The Ukrainians know tragedy. If you were born in the 20th century in Ukraine and you are still alive, you have had a very difficult life. So is it any wonder they're fighting as hard as they are? History repeats itself here time and time again. Empires come through and they wash this place with blood, and they use it for their own storytelling, and they use it so that they can justify what they're doing to other empires as they pass through this borderland. But the Ukrainians have finally said, enough, no more, we've had it. This is going to be our country. We're not a plaything for greater powers or bigger neighboring states to come and do these horrific things. We will have our own state. So this narrative coming out of Moscow is disgusting. But it's nothing that the Ukrainians haven't heard before. But from now on, they are determined to write their own history. And they're willing to fight like hell to make sure they're the ones writing it. Slava Ukrainia. Geroyam Slava.